Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, welcome to our early edition of the Age of Warfare podcast. Yes, you are not looking at things. Me and Aiden are up nice and early for you guys on this episode.
I'm
Uh,
awake.
so t- yeah, yeah. I hope you guys are awake today, guys. Yep, we decided to go in a little earlier than usual, but I hope that, but it's because we're really excited about this topic. So, and so as always, Aiden. Before we get started, how the heck are you, my friend?
I'm surprisingly good. A bit of chaotic week here, but the weather's been weirdly. We've got the annoying weather in the UK where it's cold in the mornings, so you put your coat on and then you go to work and then you walk over and you're far too warm. So we've got a bit of that going on, but in general, yeah, everything's going like ticking along as normal. My normal is not the same as other people's normal,
Cool.
but yeah, we have that.
Yep. For me, as you may be able to tell, it's raining out here, or at least it was raining. It stopped right now, so it's going to be a cloudy day. A perfect day to do a little my stream, some podcasting, have some fun. So, and I just released a new book this week. Florence Mortgage 50 Proof. Released that bad boy out to the world. So, I mean, if you guys are into horror, go check that out.
The cover
But
looks amazing, by the way.
thank you. But anyway, the topic obviously, we're continuing our discussion about El Salvador, the history of that new country in Central America called El Salvador. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Native American influence that it used to belong to the Native Americans, and how it went from Native American to Spanish rule to independence. And it was quite the interesting topic. We had another fun talking about it, about how it was the another Aztec Mayan influence, and then we went straight into the Spanish conquest and the complicated history of independence, very complicated history of independence. But now we're going to be talking about not that El Salvador is fully independent, it's fully in the independence movement. We're going to be talking about what happens as we're going to get into the more modern stuff today. So I hope you guys are ready for that. So to set the tone. So to set the
Yeah, I've been reading a few bits. I've been trying to spread my reading across all kinds of different papers and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in your view on this as well.
So yeah, all right. To set the tone here, after now that El Salvador is fully independent in the early 19th century, El Salvador's economy depended on a little resource called indigo. Yeah, indigo was a big export in El Salvador. So
It's so it's one of the things we didn't mention in the last couple of podcasts. This is a weird bit of history.
and there goes the indigo right there.
The French in the Napoleonic Wars used to wear blue and used to use indigo to dye
Yes.
the uniforms. They tried to move to a white uniform because they were struggling to get the indigo across because of blockades as well. But
Right.
yeah, this is one of the places that they got the indigo from, as we've talked about in passing in the last couple of episodes. The indigo was coming from this region as well, and indigo is a fantastic color.
Yeah, and by the way, there goes a picture of indigo. You know what it looks like in raw form. So from indigo, then obviously what indigo breeds. It breeds wealthy landowners, and it attracted the wealthy landowners to certain lands while leaving the other lands, especially those around former volcanic eruptions. And guess who got the bad? You already know I'm going with this. Who got the bad piece of land? Yeah, the poor and they're the poor and the indigenous communities. Yep.
Yep.
kind of a mini apartheid, if you ask me. Kind of, it kind of gives you those apartheid vibes, you know.
Mm. There's so many countries that have had that at various
Right,
points. Like there was points in British, like in the 60s and 70s with the IRA. There was a bit of an apartheid with the Irish over here as well. So
right,
it's not uncommon to have that. It's like your Jim Crow laws in the US.
yep,
It's a common thing to happen when you get your wealthy landowners, the poorer people or the indigenous people get pushed to these marginal areas as well. It's like there's a lot of fertile land next to a volcano, but it's a volcano. Like
right,
it's
exactly right. Yeah, but now here comes the twist. So indigo, it was a valuable resource, and farming was big. However, the problem is in the late 1800s, getting into the 1900s, getting close to the modern society, natural indigo was replaced by synthetic chemical dyes. So indigo really wasn't a thing anymore. It was not that you had more synthetic, more cheaper options.
Yeah,
So so
it's like red
right,
used to come from crushed snail shells from
yeah,
certain
purple.
regions. Yeah, yeah, your
Yeah,
purples, your reds, they
yep,
came from all of those things, and
got you.
then synthetics came along and
And
it
synthetics, right?
caused a bit of chaos. Yeah.
And in El Salvador, it caused chaos because guess what happened? The landed elite replaced this crop. Coffee became the new cash
Oh,
crop. Yep, the good old
oh,
coffee, the good old
yeah,
caffeine became the.
yeah,
And then his twist, Aiden. Remember those lands that the elites left to the poor and the indigenous
yeah,
communities. All of a sudden, those lands were valuable again.
yeah.
They went,
Because like volcanoes, the way they rejuvenate
yeah,
the soil, it's like the whole Nile thing, where it rejuvenates the soil every year. So yeah, it's like I hate the whole cash crop thing because it
yeah,
really
but I know.
pisses me off that
Yeah.
people get forced into that, and they haven't got any choice. Like
So,
Afghanistan
so
with
I'm
their
sure you
poppies.
can guess. Yeah. So I'm sure you can guess what happened to those landowners who are next to the volcanoes. They became landless. Why? Because the elite controlled legislature and president passed vacancy laws that removed people from their lands, and the great majority of Salvadorians became landless as their former lands were absorbed into the new coffee plantations.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
harsh.
yeah, I
Yes.
know. Yeah, like I said, El Salvador's history is pretty dark. It's why
Yeah,
I try to tell people that it's a pretty dark history. It's not the most cleanest of histories.
yeah.
And there
As I
you
said
go. That
before we started, like some of the stuff I'm reading is like some of their references to the older stuff as well. It's like, oh wow, that makes us look a benevolent empire. Like
I know.
it's insane. Yeah.
Right. And what we're gonna have here is a picture of one of the richest families in El Salvador, 1911. This was one of the richest families in the country back then. And the coffee industry gave birth to a obituary. Obviously, we all know what that is when a group of elites take control of an entire country.
Yeah, it's
And
also wearing white suits. That's a bit of it's like a bit of a fuck you to the. Sorry about my swearing, but
no, that's okay,
to the
man.
farmers,
That's exactly what it is.
to get a crisp white suit is you got to have some money behind you for that. And like there's three in the front there wearing crisp whites. So it's one of those it's one of those things when you look at these old photos.
Uh-huh.
You got to think how they got that thing. So one of the things you will notice the hats, the Panama hat
Right.
that they were wearing, but
Uh-huh.
also it's the clothing styles, what clothing that they're wearing. It tells you the class of the person. I know, obviously, once you know people that you can tell more about their class, but their class, their wealth they have to be able to do
Right.
it. And it kind of shows how they really just like soaked up all the money and went, yeah, we're going to spend this on the most fashionable suit that we can get. They are very proud of their suits.
Oh yeah, they believe me. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was no shame to that.
Mhm.
So obviously, these group of guys think, think think of it like the feudal system in the Middle Ages. This was like their version of feudalism,
Yeah, it really was. Oh,
and
so
and, and
why
we
do we
all
still have that?
and we already know what the faults of feudalism. We already know how messed up that system was.
Yeah. Well,
Feudalism,
at least in feudalism in the Middle Ages, that the people who were the landlords, they went through with their promises. They defended the lands. They came up and they went and fought the wars like they were supposed to. It was 40 days out of a year that you had to serve the king that you swore fealty to, and they actually did that. Once that got removed, you're just a guy who owns land, and it was a guy. It was always a guy as well. So, but yeah, as you said, it's right. After you got rid of that obligation for the
right?
feudal
Mhm.
system, you end up with this situation.
So what? So obviously, so then, what the crazy part is, you know, then so what happened was that the wealthy landowners were granted a supermajority of the national legislature and the economy. Yeah, tell me this. Tell me that won't go wrong. You get a super majority. So basically, for most of El Salvador's independent history before 1980, it was mostly the rich. You know, so and this is this, and I was reading more, and sometimes I feel like my mother, who was raised in El Salvador, might have some rose-colored glasses. This is where
See,
you get the
yeah.
rose-colored glasses idea.
So this is one of the weird things about the UK, that we've got loads of blocks of lands that are owned by essentially the rich, the landed gentry, and people like that, or big corporations, and we live in those places. And it's only really in the last 10 years or so the possibly even 20, depending on how you're pushing it, um, everything has gone really badly because there's no obligation to do something while you're doing that. It's like it seems nice when the times are good, and the late 80s into early 90s was a good time for a lot of people, but it wasn't so much in El Salvador a little bit before that, was it?
Right. So
Because we're about to get to the important bit
yeah, we're
in
gonna. Yeah.
about 1978.
Not quite, not yet at least, because there was a period of time from 1931 to 1979 where El Salvador was ruled by military dictatorships, and again, this is why I say rose-colored glasses to a degree,
Yeah.
Because I have to be a little bit open. I have to be a little bit honest. My mother was kind of born to, I don't want to say a super rich family, but she was kind of born to a little bit of privilege because her father owned a pretty big sugar plantation. And he was kind of a very rich. He was kind of a big deal in this town. So
So
you could say she was kind
upper
of born,
middle type of territory.
yeah, upper middle class. Yeah, she was born to a good family. They were able to afford a lot of things, but to be fair to her, she was always raised to be a hard worker. She was always raised to be, hardworking. But even though, despite that, there was this machismo thing in El Salvador where the males had everything. They had the rights to everything. So even though my
Yeah.
mother was kind of born to the middle class, and she couldn't really enjoy much of it because now it went to the man in the marriage. And
Yeah, this. I alluded to this earlier with that,
yeah,
and it was always the man. Yeah, it was.
But in fairness, a lot of Latin America struggles with this. This is a big thing in Latin America. That's not just limited to my mother's country, but a lot of countries struggle with this machismo image, where the man has to be, treated as the superior because this is what they learned from Spain.
Mm.
Because Spain tends to be that way.
It's very European
Right, centric, right?
thought process. Yeah, it's so. For example, say me and my wife, I pay the rent, I pay the big bills. My wife does the food shopping. It's like, and like we both go to work and everything like that. We're far more modern about this, and she helps out when I don't have money. I help out when she doesn't have money. It's all very modern with us. However, we still have that in the
Hey,
background of
Jack.
I
What's up,
pay
Jack?
the rent.
Yeah.
Jack. Hey, that you have this sort of weird idea in your head of like the man's the provider. He puts a roof over everyone's head and he makes sure that everything runs. He's like, and the woman runs the household, but the man provides for the household. And even in modern culture, we still have this as a thing. And even as I said, obviously we're particularly modern family, and we still have elements of that with the way that we do things, even how we've divided up stuff of payments and things. So it's a long running human culture thing that gets stronger, especially with obviously, as we've talked about before, the strong Catholicism that runs through ex-Spanish places, because Catholicism does have this very how the family should work thing in there, as you get with strict Protestants as well. The Mormons, good example of this, as a strict Protestant community. So you see this even up to the modern age, and mentally we've never got out of it as well.
Correct. That's 100% correct. So, obviously, going back to the dictatorship era in El Salvador, there was from between 1931 to 1979, El Salvador had military dictatorships. Although the most notable event was the 1932 Salvadorian peasant uprising, because obviously, what else did you expect? You have these these rich guys in white suits taking over the economy and taking over everything. Peasants are going to get really upset. So they did an uprising.
If that had a reaction from the Russian Revolution. I know Russian Revolution was 1918, so it's not too far removed. It's only like 12 years afterwards. It takes a bit of time for stuff to move around in those days. So I wonder if some of those ideas went there, which we'll get to later about the left and right things that El Salvador has in the modern age. But I wonder if that's actually a factor in this.
Well, I'm about to show you. It's a little hard to see, so you might want to. So if you guys are not or triggered easily, you might want to look away. Let's see. Let me see. Copy image address. Yeah, this is the aftermath of the 1932 uprising, where and this is tough to see because over 10,000 to 40,000 indigenous people and political opponents were murdered during the uprising. Obviously the people in power just imprisoned in exile. It was basically a mini Holocaust. I
was about to make that connection myself.
Yeah.
That photo, that's Holocaust stuff.
And historians describe the coup as a watershed event in Salvadorian history. This was definitely one of the big events in Salvadorian history, and it kind of changed things because unfortunately you don't really see this, but as a white Salvadorian, white Latino, we unfortunately people do tend to think that Salvadorians are pretty racist people. The white Salvadorians tend to be very racist because there was a period of time during this dictatorship period where if you were indigenous or colored, you were not allowed in El Salvador. It was kind of a mini apartheid.
Yeah,
Like,
it's we talked out on the last episode where they had the whole thing with slavery, where
yeah,
black people were considered less as well. So it's
yeah,
it's
but
that's going to come through in later. So it's like even in the US that you find that in the southern states people have
yeah, Jack.
more racist views just as a default.
Right.
It's not that they are generally racist, but it's that the way that everything has been up until very recently
Yeah,
has been like that. It's like we said about the other stuff as well. It's like it's that mindset that you don't get out of very easily.
because the reason people tend to say El Salvador tends to be the most racist of Central America because the other countries, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, they tend to be more proud of their, the indigenous roots. El Salvador, not as much. Unfortunately, they used a heavy hand against colored people, and it was pretty heavy-handed. I think there was a period of time where if you were colored, you wasn't even now in the country. You couldn't even come in.
Yeah,
You know,
it's quite crazy that
yeah,
you do that in a country that is essentially people that would be classed as coloured are the indigenous population. Like,
yeah.
well, they're not
But
coming in; they've always been here.
this is why I tell my closest friends. This is why when I say El Salvador tends to be more right wing, I'm not lying to you. I'm not. I'm really not lying. We tend and this is the evidence is right here. So kind of one of the darkest period of history in El Salvador. I'll take that away because I don't want people to be seeing it too much.
Yeah,
But what I do want to bring up though is this champ. Let me just bring him up again. This was General. Okay, let me see if it comes up. Come on.
that's
Yeah,
the thing. I know you're not supposed to judge people. There's some evil eyes.
yeah. I don't know why it's not coming up properly here. Okay, hold on. Yeah, it's just
Uh,
not. It's just not coming up right here
uh,
for some odd reason. Oh, here we go.
there we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the medals. We
Yep.
expected
Yeah, this
medals.
is General Maximilio Hernandez Martinez. He was the president of El Salvador from 1931 to 1944. Oh, and he was the first dictator.
Yeah.
If you really want to be,
I,
specific.
I, I wonder which side he was on in the Second World War. Yeah, it's the wrong one,
Yeah,
probably.
the wrong one, obviously. Yeah, the
Yeah.
wrong one, obviously.
Mm,
you know, uh, obviously, so a little bit about this guy. He was in office from 1931 to 1934. 1935 to 1944. And he was a military officer because we had what they call the military coups, military dictatorships when the military took over.
yeah,
Something like what you have in Nigeria or some of these other countries where the military takes over.
I've been wondering that from a modern perspective. Like, it's a bit of a tangent here, but if you look what's happening in the US and the UK at the moment, there's for example, the speech that Trump gave to the generals as well.
Right.
There's very big chance of that, and it's like we talked about with going back to the Greek political philosophy thing we talked about, where you have a political system that does a thing and it has its bad points, and this is an autocracy. It's
Right.
like you could have a really good general who does really genuinely good stuff for the country, but you're then stuck with that.
Right.
No one has any say, and this chap probably weren't doing much good stuff.
Because and here's the crazy thing about the 1931 elections in El Salvador. When I was doing some more reading, El Salvador had a presidential election in 1931. However, every election before that had a predetermined winner.
That's what's the point of having an election?
Right.
Yeah.
However, the previous president decided in the spring of 1930 to hold a free and fair election in 1931. So, so there was a little bit of free will in 1930. Honestly, there was room for it, and then you had the and then this guy, the general you see here, he withdrew his presidential candidacy and supported the Labour Party back then. And he was expected, and he was expected to be. And he was expected to be the the vice president. But
it's
obviously,
a little bit like in the US where the parties switched. I can't remember the name it's given now, but where the parties switched over of what they did as well.
Right.
Like the danger. We've talked about this. Another thing we've talked about quite a lot as well, where a party name doesn't actually reflect what the party does.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting that they held a free election and ended up with a dictator. It's
only that this president, the previous president, the guy that actually got elected wasn't a dictator. He was actually trying to do things the right way. But you had something called the Great Depression. Which makes things really hard.
That caused a few issues.
Yeah, but obviously the Great Depression.
There's a whole situation going on.
It caused another unrest. So then the general here used his position as Minister of War to quell protests while suppressing anti-government protests. So Martinez, the general here, led a group of military officers in June 1931 demanding that the president repeal the Red Code law that allowed the president to try and execute military officers for attempting a coup. And they also demanded that the president reinstate the military's right to insurrection. Obviously, the president rejected their demands.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, the military has no right for insurrection. So one of the weird things about the UK is after our civil war, we cut the king's head off and we tried a republic and it all went horribly wrong, so we got a king back. So what happens is the military is sworn to the monarch, but the monarch doesn't have the right to declare war, and we have the same sort of rules as what's the US one's posse comitatus. It's the law in the US where you can't use US troops on US soil, and we have a similar thing over here. We have that, so it divides the power, and this is sort of this situation arriving. This is a similar sort of time it's happening. So this is there are countries across the world that are dealing with this. Obviously, ours was 1600s, which is we were kind of early on a bunch of things, but this type of political situation has precedent as well, and you can get something good out of it, hopefully. But there's when they demand certain things, you're like, no, they're like, let's not do that.
And then, so then in 1931, the president of El Salvador, that was the president, attempted to reduce the military's budget in order to improve the government's financial situation. But as you may expect, the army's officers refused to comply, right? Because why would they want to take a cut? So the government had failed to pay the military officers and enlisted men for several months. Ooh, yeah, that's never a good thing. Yep.
This is exactly why we executed our king in the 1600s, because the army refused to disband because they weren't given the moratorium on killing people in war, because at that time it was still murder unless you were given a license after the fact, and also they weren't paid.
So,
I've done. No, this is the best bit.
So obviously, and then
the Romans fighting Carthaginians, and where did the Carthaginians fail?
Yep, the mercenaries, right?
Goddamn mercenaries.
Yep, goddamn mercenaries, man. It costs too much money. We got to get rid of you. You cost us too much.
Yep, and it's like no one ever learns.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And we have Mr. Nee Edwards. How you doing, Mr. Nee? I hope you're doing
Hello,
well.
Nee. Thanks for joining.
Yep. So on the 2nd of December, right, of 1931, due to the government's failure to pay the military wages and removing the general from his position, a group of junior officers overthrew the president and forced him to flee the country to Guatemala and arrested many of the army's senior officers. Oh my, that's a wonderful story right there. That's gonna lead to some wonderful things for the country. Right?
Oh, look, you didn't pay your military. The military are angry. You remove a general, and then you have a military coup. Like this is just basic steps and things. You know this is going to happen once you do that thing. Why didn't they set up something beforehand?
And then obviously that led to the start of the dictatorship era of El Salvador. And this is where I get to the point where Salvadorians tend to lean more towards the right, because this chap right here, right, was personally sympathetic to the Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. Yeah, so let that sink in. Let that sink in.
All the way to the right. So even if you're pulling it back, you're only going to be centre right at best. If you're going to be against that, unless you're full-on communist, then you probably end up in a camp if this guy's in charge.
And then some Salvadorians support the Axis Party, and as on June the 10th, 1940, the day Italy joined the Second World War, 300 men dressed like Italian black shirts marched in the streets of San Salvador, the capital, in support of Italy. However, the government suppressed the march, and then the United States pressured them to support the Allies after the Japanese attack. So obviously, Anuru said, "Hey, you can't do that. Those are the bad guys. Don't support those guys. Come join our side," the United States said. "Come join the good guys."
So yeah, it's one of the ironic things about the US is they were like Ford was a Nazi. He was there was so much support. One of the reasons for the late entry to the First World War was A, the war with Mexico, and B, that there was half the newspapers in the US were written in German. It's like they didn't want to go to war with Germany because it was the mother country. So there was nothing racial about it in that sense. It was more we don't want to do this thing, and obviously they ended up turning up right at the end.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, El Salvador declared war on Japan on the 8th of December, and then NATO, Germany, and Italy on the 12th of December. the government arrested German, Italian, and Japanese nationals and took their lands. So yeah, they go to the change of hearts.
It's and took their lands. That's why they did it. It's like because, as we talked about before, they're taking the lands that they want, and that's been a big thing in something like even when we started off on this from really early on. It was all about having the correct bit of land.
And then comes this popular scene in Salvadorian history. Let me put it up. This is a very popular scene in Salvadorian history. This is known as the Palm Sunday coup, because in 1944, the General Martinez held an election and elected himself to a third term as president, which angered many politicians since it violated the Constitution.
Yeah. Well, it's the here we are. Here's something I was reading about earlier. That in El Salvador, in the US, you can have 2 terms, like back to back. In El Salvador, you can only have 1 term. You can have 2 terms, but they can't be back to back. The current president managed to get himself 2 terms through various channels and things, but 3 terms is a bit far.
Yeah,
he could be a dictator at that point.
Yep, and that's what the president of El Salvador, the current one, wants. He wants another term.
Yeah.
Granted, people love him, so we'll get into that in a little later.
Yeah, a little later.
But then
interesting connection though.
But let's focus on this popular scene. This is the Palm Sunday coup. On April the 2nd, 1944, Palm Sunday, ironically, that's what they call the Palm Sunday coup. Pro-Axis military officers attempted to mount the coup against Martinez. There was 2 Salvadorians who might the Axis party. They might the fascist party. They might the idea of being an Axis. So they tried to take over the national radio station, took control of the Air Force, and captured the police station. But obviously but they failed pretty miserably. So as you can see here, it's a blurry picture, but these guys were pro-Axis. They tried to take over the country. But
so one of the things that people often forget about the Second World War is the amount of Allied countries that had a big presence of Axis supporting people. We had, for example, the UK. We had Lord Haha, who was he had a radio show and he was doing that. You had Vichy France, so there was the French that joined in with the Axis. Italy, well, obviously that's where fascism originated, so obviously that was going to be a thing. And then it goes over to the New World. You have all these things. It's not surprising that we see this support for the Axis powers during this period. It's like a lot of things that they said are things that are said nowadays in politics. So people turn around and go, it's a bit, but it's better than what we have now. It's that sort of situation going on, hence this. So this image as well is very similar to so many images of revolution. It's
right.
The French Revolution, R1, to be fair, and even up to January the 6th in the US. That's the level of stuff that we're talking about. Like you're trying to invade the space of the politicians to force them to do what you want them to do, when that's what the ballot box is for.
So now we're gonna jump a little bit. We're gonna jump to the 1970s, because obviously in the 1970s things started to get pretty heated.
Just
things
a
were
little
starting to
bit. Yeah.
yeah, but many events. I mean, obviously, my mother was still in El Salvador, living her best life. She was enjoying life, and she had a restaurant there. But unfortunately, not a
Just ask
political.
quickly, when did she move out of El Salvador?
Around the '80s, around the mid '80s. She,
Oh, so she stuck it out for a while then.
yeah. I mean,
Mm.
she was actually a nurse. She actually took care of the soldiers of the Salvadorian government. That's why her life was in danger.
It's
Yeah,
why you'd stay and B why you'd leave at the same it's in
yeah.
the same breath.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
that's kind of cool that we've both got
So yeah, many
you know,
events. Yeah, many events eroded hope of reform for democratic means and persuaded those opposed to the government that armed insurrection was the only way to achieve change, which unfortunately would lead to something even darker than the 1932 Salvadorian peasant uprising. It was the darkest period in Salvadorian history, which is the 1979 to 1992 Salvadorian Civil War.
yeah,
And this is where, it really just, everything just totally fell apart for the country. Both the
yeah,
far right and both the far left political wings disagree with the new government and increased political violence rapidly developed into a civil war, and then and which led to one of the worst massacres in Salvadorian history, the Mosete massacre in December 1981. So let me bring up a picture here. This is the memorial in El Salvador of that day, 1981.
yeah. I mean, it's you can tell it's a big thing. It says a memorial to it.
You know,
It's yeah,
so the Salvadorian army. So the short version, the Salvadorian army killed more than 811 civilians. The army arrived on the village on the 10th, following crashes with the guerrillas. Obviously the commies. You know,
yeah.
and the Salvadorian army, under the orders of Domingo, was responsible for the massacre. So they just said, we're just going to kill everyone because we're getting tired of these far left armies trying to attack us, trying to take us down.
Yeah. Oh no! This is left-wing ideology is contagious. Yeah. It it happens. To be fair, also it happens on the other side as well. But
Yep.
this period in time as well is characterized by a lot of this, where you've got it's the hot spots of the Vietnam War. It's the late '60s, early '70s. The Northern Ireland, for example. I grew up in Northern Ireland, and it's the up until the early '80s where I lived there that you had this anger sort of bubbling under the surface, and it just came up until the fall of the Soviet Union. And this thing didn't stop. So the ideologies in play just clashed constantly, and you
Right.
had a lot of this. And South America got arguably got the worst of it as well. Like, well, I mean,
And
Southern Asia got some bad stuff, but
and then so you had a colonel called Domingo Monterosa. He was the one who ordered the massacre to happen, and he had his main on the 3rd Infantry Brigade barracks in San Miguel. So one of the barracks was under his main for a very long time. However, in 2019, jumping a little ahead, the new president Nayib Bukele, which I kind of love, he actually made a power move, and he ordered the removal of the colonel's name from the brigade barracks. So his name is no longer there. He removed it. He ordered it and the United Nations blamed that
connecting
colonel.
to this is there was another massacre that happened,
Yep.
and they've just put 2 people in prison. There was to higher up military officers that they threw in prison over this recently under this current president as well. So he's cleaning house. He is proper cleaning house.
Yeah, but the Civil War was really just one of the worst moments in Salvadorian history, and it really just divided the country badly. I mean, it really just divided the country badly. I'm gonna be honest, and then the war also gave birth to one of the biggest gangs in America called the MS-13. Because the MS-13,
yeah, you were telling me about this a couple of weeks
yep.
ago. Yeah,
Because originally the MS-13 was founded to protect the people of El Salvador from the government. Yeah,
which is kind of insane, really. It's
Yeah.
like you understand why they're pretty against the US government, not just because of the current leadership, but just in general, because that's how they were founded. They're an anti-governmental organization.
So essentially the MS-13 was founded to protect the people from the government. So, before they became just a regular gang that just spread terror and extorted their own people, they helped the people. It's kind of crazy that such a crime organization was actually founded to protect the people from what they believed was a government just that wanted them gone.
It's one of the weird things about that. So we get this in London as well, where we find that especially when it comes to sort of like basic drugs like dealing weed, it's a very basic thing. No one really gives a crap about weed, and people do that and they get the money in because they're trying to help their families, and that's the only way out of that environment, is to join these groups to move forward in their life, to do something better than basically begging on the street is their only other option. So I'm not trying to rehabilitate MS-13 because they have done some absolutely horrendous stuff, but you can understand why people have joined. Like,
Right.
there's reasons behind it. It's not
Right.
oh, you know what, I think I'm a massive cool guy, and I'm like, well, I'm your best cholo, mate. Yeah, all right, cool. I'm gonna get myself a nice car and go around, and yeah, it's like that's not why people do that. People do that because it's the incentive of it, but it's
But
like
but
they're not
but
necessarily bad people. They're people who are in a bad situation
and a
who have
little bit
chosen the bad way out.
and a little bit of more history about the MS-13 was that it didn't originate in El Salvador. It actually originated in Los Angeles in the 1980s, and it was set up by Salvadorian immigrants who immigrated to the United States after the Civil War. So so basically, in the very beginning, it was a group of young delinquent heavy metal fans who lived in Los Angeles. And originally the gang's main purpose. Yep.
I'm not from Los Angeles, but I'm a delinquent metal fan. So.
Right, metal. Okay, I got you. But originally, but it's the thing though. Originally, the game's main purpose was to protect Salvadorian immigrants from the other more established gangs from Los Angeles. Believe it or not, so they were there to protect their own kind from the others. So it's like.
So in the modern news, when we talk about like people pushing back against ICE in the US with what they're doing at the moment, it's MS-13 is just doing what they were set up to do. We're protecting people. It's the methods we could disagree with, but they're doing what they were set up to do.
They were doing what they were set to do. I mean, I mean, like I said, I can understand the purpose of it. How and but like I said, like the Salvadorian Civil War, just it really divided the country. It would, and and then so you got two classes of people. You got people like my mother who actually enjoyed herself before the Civil War, and she blames the communists for trying to come in and ruin her country because she actually lived a pretty good life, and she and to this day it broke up her family, and she can't really get together with her family no more because everybody had to scatter around, run away from the terrors of the war, and
And
then
as a left-wing person, that's how bad on the left. Communism is our point where we got our low. It's like the stuff that the communist activists have done in these situations. Yeah, our left wing stuff
yep,
messes up as well.
and then of course you got the other side, like I said, the MS-13 and the saying it was necessary because it, it's just it was necessary. We needed to show the government that we wasn't going to be bullied anymore.
Weirdly enough, I think if they'd have never have named themselves, no one would have really cared. They'd have just been the resistance.
Now,
When we talk about France in World War II, talk about the French resistance. There were many groups in that. There were communists. There were people who just wanted France to go back to the way it was. There were many groups working against it, and they fought against each other as well. But your like thought process, as soon as you hear is they are the resistance, is well, clearly they're on the right side of things. But as soon as you say MS-13, you think, it's a gang, mate. They're just taking KG-19s down the street and just mowing people down. Like it's the thought process that hits.
Right. Now, of course, thank goodness the Salvadorian Civil War ended in 1992. But then you have what you call the post-war period, which is when El Salvador it struggled, man. It was a struggle, but it's also where El Salvador kind of turned more towards the right. It became one of the more right-wing countries in Central America because in 1994, the nationalist Republican Alliance won the presidency, and it would become and it would kind of take office for a very for quite a while from 1994 to 2009.
It was like when we had the Conservatives in power over here. It was a serious amount of time that they were in changing up the country because it's like here's a weird thing. Reading up on all of this stuff, doing research. The El Salvadorian politics is very, very similar to UK politics. It's weird. There's two major parties, and then you have a third party that chips in, and then you have the other parties that can do stuff. And reading this history of El Salvadorian politics, they seem to have done the same sort of thing that we've done. They just swing to a centre-right party and then just hope for the best, and leave them in and go, do it, and then it doesn't happen.
I mean, to El Salvador's credit, to his credit, things started to get better. When the right wing party did take over, things started to become better, but it wasn't really much better. I mean, the problem with El Salvador was gang violence because remember the MS-13 I was talking about. After the Civil War ended, they just became a menace. They went from a gang protecting his own kind to just being like any normal street gang, just extorting their own kind. There was a point.
This goes really far back. So during the 100 Years' War,
Right.
What used to happen was the soldiers, who obviously not the nobles because they go home and to their estates, but the soldiers would be just sat around doing nothing, and they would do this. They would turn into gangs. It's like this way, in terms like reavers come in. And they do this within France in the 1400s. This is not a new thing. Like we've seen this throughout the entirety of history for a group of people that help in warfare. If you don't actually give them something else to do, they're gonna just basically carry on unless you stop them in some fashion. And this is where we get this MS-13 issue.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, exactly. And but so I mean, they did the best they can, but eventually, from 1989 to 2009, the white wing kind of took over until 2009 when people started to vote for the left wing again. There was a short period of time from 2009 to 2019 where the left wing party kind of came back to power to a degree.
I saw that, and it was
Yep.
very bizarre.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
Assume it's similar to how we've had it in the UK, where we get fed up with one side, so the other side.
Exactly right. But the thing is, you look at the numbers, right? It wasn't like the left wing party won by that much. It was, these were some close elections. It wasn't really all that close. It was like you said, people were just getting sick and tired of what you would call it. What was there? People, it just wasn't working.
Yeah, the status quo just wasn't.
Yeah, there you go. The status quo just wasn't working until 2019 when Nayib Bukele, won. He actually won. And he invented the new party, New Ideas, which is the new party, and and that would change El Salvador forever.
So for the UK they'd be the Lib Dems, and in the US they'd be, what's the third party in the US?
The Libertarians.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Let's carry on. Let's not get into libertarians, because this will be a 3-hour podcast.
Well, yeah. Well, but what was happening in El Salvador was this. But then the reason why Nayib Bukele won with what we call an independent party, because people were tired of status quo. It was either you put the right wing party or the far left wing. None of them were working. I mean, obviously, Salvadorians, like I keep telling you, we tend to lean more towards the right, but we wanted something different, man. We wanted. So that's when the new party called Nuevas Ideas, or New Ideas in English, right, became a thing. It's a populist party. Remember we were talking about populism?
Populism, yeah. I said that thing last night about populism. It just popped up in something I was watching. I'm like, this is explaining this thing. One of the things here, though, is this shows the extreme parties. People get fed up with them. They vote for them, and then the extreme parties say they're going to do these things, and realize they can't do their things. Left or right, neither side can do those things, and then people end up getting fed up and going for something more centrist. And as far as the current El Salvadoran government is, it's center right, I think.
Yeah, yeah. His party, the current party, the president has it. They tend to be center right on social issues, but they tend to be they tend to be more centered when it comes to finance or economics.
Which is so. Over here with the Conservatives, the most successful Conservative governments have been those type of governments that are centre right and have turned around and just gone, right, we'll be given social stuff as well, and then they stay in for a while. Labour, where they've moved to the centre, have done that. They've technically centre left, but they're centre right. Are doing similar things. You see this so often where you get this mix of politics with the centrists. Like, people have got a lot of hate,
Right.
especially in the US as well. I understand why in the US, because it's all to do with the elections. But when you actually look down, you want a party that centres something, because it's kind of works. Because they go, yeah, we'll do a bunch of stuff that this side wants to ameliorate any issues we're going to have, and then we'll carry on with our policies that are going to fix whatever country we're in. And this is where I think this chap in charge of El Salvador is doing the right thing. He's bridging gaps. And he's taking a hard line on something. However, he's also been hard up for human rights issues. I mean, we're not particularly great on that because Tony Blair, but yeah, there's a few things that I've seen. However, I read them and go, yeah, he technically broke the law, but what he did was kind of right, and it's his breaking of the gang. Apparently there's human rights abuses over that, but like, you're breaking gangs, like,
so
there's not much else you can do with that.
It's funny because Narib, the current president, his party is what they call a big tent political party, rejecting both left and right wing labels, and he labels it like a third way, like an alternative. But yet, many conservatives support him. He's supported by a lot of conservatives.
Yeah, he's certainly centre right, and centre right is something, even as a lefty as I am. I don't have a problem with centre right governments at all. Like, centre right governments can do a lot of good shit.
But I'm gonna tell you something, man. It's and he's crime wise, he's done a good job taking down the gangs in El Salvador. Based on what I've seen, he's done a wonderful job there, man. And what I like about him,
stop Amnesty International hitting him up for El Salvador is currently in a state of political emergency, which removes certain rights when you're arrested. In the general Western world, we're very up on our rights. Often we get them wrong. I'm sure we've all seen videos on Facebook about this type of thing. But he's done his best, and there's a certain point where you have to just weather that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to weather the storm. But on the other hand, right? El Salvador is actually one of the safest countries in Central America now. It used to be down in the dumps when it came to safety.
Oh yeah, it was.
Like I said, it was a country.
Something out of 300.
Yeah, like I said, it was a country left for dead. That country was left for dead. So seriously, that country was left for dead. It was, but it was buried in the depths of mediocrity, crime. You name it. One of the. It was a place he didn't want to go to. Now it's like
this year the UK has also declared it a place to not go to as well. So I think things are hot enough over there.
Yeah, but
it's well, but I think people are angry about things, and that's why we're getting the warnings coming through.
And I think the only controversial thing he's done was trying to build a Bitcoin to be the actual legal tender currency in El Salvador.
That was fucking bizarre, because El Salvador's currency is what, the US dollar, but at the moment, because the original currency went pretty mental, and they were like, we'll just use the US dollar because it's stable. So, trying to get away from using another country's currency because you have no control of that. And like, I understand the want to do that. Bitcoin wasn't the way to do it, but it's thing like it's set up a currency is mad. Like set up a currency is going to cause you're going to create disruption when you do that, and he's not going to do that because he's all about not disrupting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It becomes a situation where, how can I say this? It becomes a situation where the anti-communist movement is still big out there. Like I said, the division between of the Civil War out there. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's in the best position right now. There's still a lot of wounds left to be healed. Look at my mother. Look at my mother for example. She's got wounds that they're never going to heal. We
were alive when this stuff was happening as well.
Yeah,
it's like as I said, I grew up in Northern Ireland. There's stuff after the Good Friday Agreement. It's a difficult situation to be in because there's so much going on. You have to kind of pander to those people a little bit, otherwise they're going to kick off. Just keep them sweet for a little while you try and fix everything else. And it might have been caught up about some human rights violations, but quite frankly, he's looking at ends justify the means at the moment. He's like, I'm liking this guy. It's like, as I said before this episode, I made a point of reading stuff from multiple different viewpoints to get a balanced idea. And yeah, the human rights violations are worrying, but the only thing that I could think of when I was reading all of the violations that he'd done was that's just a US president. Like what? Like that is literally just what a US president does. Like if the US can get away with it, El Salvador should be able to. And if he's fixing things and those are the things that he's breaking, go for it.
Yep. Now, the last thing I'll leave you with before we go is that last year the amount of homicides in El Salvador was at its record low. Only 1.9% of homicides per 100,000 people in the population, which is well below any other Latin American country. So,
All right. Let's put some context on this. Let's put. I know obviously the UK is really low, so let's put the UK figure. See what the UK figure is, and then the US figure as well.
Yeah.
Right. Give some people some context on this because that's actually insanely good.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think El Salvador might have the same population, or just a little under the population of London, I believe.
Yeah, it's about sort of London or Scotland or Wales. It's that kind of size.
So what's the what would be the homicide rate in England? I mean, if you can find that easily.
If I could get down my stairs quickly, higher. But it's like our homicide rate's pretty low, to be fair. I know the gun homicide rate is insanely low, mainly because there are many guns. But we're probably not far off it. We're probably like 1 or just below 1%.
Right. Okay. Pretty good. Well, I saw. Yeah, we are well above the hour, man. Wow,
Oh
yeah.
shit, yeah.
But I mean, I'm surprised I didn't get too emotional. I mean, it was just a lot of depressing information, but it's information that had to be covered.
Yeah,
And now, and I guess this show was kind of dedicated to you, Aiden, just to show why El Salvador tends to lean more towards the white over the
yeah,
left. You know, not to say we all do, but you know, this unfortunately like I was telling you, history dictates what we think based on
mm,
history. And you know, yeah, unfortunately, I wish I could say the history of El Salvador has been rosy, but it simply hasn't, man. I mean, we got some great food. We got our cuisine is great. The country is beautiful. Just unfortunately, the history isn't as rosy. But I think you could say that for any country, really.
yeah. There's a few things. There's the weird thing about the UK of where we have shit food, and that's literally just because US soldiers were stationed here in World War II and we had
Uh-huh.
rationing. It's like British food is actually really, really fucking good. Um, uh, like you think of Irish food, our
Right.
food's not that dissimilar. It's very close. But though I do miss Irish food, it's really hard to get Irish food in the UK now.
Right.
That's a weird one. That's a separate conversation that we'll have
Yeah,
at some
that's a
point.
whole nother
Yeah.
conversation.
Mm.
Well, guys, I think that's gonna do it for this one, guys. Oh,
Mm.
but before we go, Aiden, it's gonna be your turn to pick the next topic.
I think we stick with South America, so I'm going to have a bit of a dig in, and where we talked about the Falklands. I,
Falklands, right?
yeah, so I think it'd be only right to dig into Argentina and have a little bit
Yeah.
more in depth on that to see why they ended up where they did in '82. So I think it's Argentina's our next up.
The Argentinians, right?
Mm, yeah.
Yep.
I've met a few, to be fair. They're like
Argentina has to be a fun one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, Argentina is a, you know, one of the more fun countries to study. Yeah, it's had a very interesting one. I've always been in the belief that Argentina should be one of the richest Latin American countries in the world, but yet it's not.
It's not, but we own all of the oil that they get hold of, hence 82. Anyway, we will talk about
Yeah, we're
that
gonna get into
point.
all that good
Yeah,
stuff.
about
Yeah,
that point next episode.
that should be a
But
fun one.
yeah, Argentina.
Yep.
Let's go for the history of Argentina, and then go through that. I'll have to do myself a bit of reading because I
Yeah,
just want to know.
yeah.
Really.
Jack has been watching us all this time. Thank you for watching, Mr. Jack Childers, my man from Tennessee. I hope you learned some valuable information because this was a fun but kind of intense episode since it has a lot to do with my mother. So, but you
Mm.
know, like I said, we always try to keep these episodes free from personal biases and all that and preferences. We always try to just aim for history and education here. So I think we did really good with this one.
Yeah,
Well,
say
guys,
for example, where I announced that
yeah,
I am left wing and didn't say that, so
yeah,
that
but
you
I
know where I'm
mean,
coming from. Yeah,
listen, man, it's all
yeah,
good, man.
yeah.
But guys, thank you for watching, man. You know, you support me, the world. Thank you for me and Jack and anyone who might have been watching in the background. Uh, Thank you for watching. We'll see you in a couple of weeks when we talk about the history of Argentina. That should be an interesting one.
Yeah, be a good one.
But
Be a good one.
until then, I'm Tony's Anxious Maximus. That's my man, the Gate Aiden Konya, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Okay. We did it again.